Alright, ladies and gentlemen, I'm going to attempt to make a Paladin versus Mage guide for Season of Discovery. The first style of guide I haven't made in this format in years. Fun fact, the only other PvP guide that I made using my traditional patented MS Paint format was another Mage guide, damn near like a year ago, I think. Other fun facts before I get started. The wife recently found out that I hadn't been putting like my Patreon and my Buy Me a Coffee in the description. She is not happy about that, so I'm going to have to start doing that again. These videos do take a considerable amount of time to make, especially on the theory crafting end. It's like 4 p.m. in China right now, which is like 1 a.m. in the States, which means I really should be like mining mithril and or thorium ore right now in Season of Discovery. But instead, I am stuck here attempting to make a Paladin versus Mage guide for you fine, amazing people. You're not allowed to swear too much within like the first 5 minutes of video. Otherwise, I would call you tickle somethings. Fun fact, you'll notice that at the top of the screen here, I do not have Divine Steed. We are going to attempt to defeat a mage without using Divine Steed. We're also going to be doing a bit of a recap about Paladin versus Mage mechanics in general. To me, this is actually a fairly easy matchup, believe it or not, in Season of Discovery, and it all has to do with the fact that Exorcism hits rather hard and is on a 7.5 second cooldown. All right, so quick refresher for all you guys out there. The gear that is highly suggested for you to wear when you're fighting a mage, it'll vary based upon whether you're using like an Avengers suit, a hybrid suit, a PvP suit, like whatever Blizzard is giving us. But Tier 1 and Tier 2 are absolutely deadly in this matchup because they come with an caked on them with a bunch of fire resist. So it becomes very easy to pick up like an Onyxia Tooth Pendant, to put like a fire resist enchant on your Dragon's Blood cape, which is your BIS PvP cape for like a million years, unless Blizzard gives us something better in Season of Discovery. You get fire resist enchants on helms and leg. You might throw on like a tidal loop charm or something else of that nature. Of course, you have your Hand of Rag, which is like your best PvP weapon for the entire game. And then you'll notice that you're already over 156 fire resistance with a fire resist aura. This suddenly pops up and well over 200. At 200, your fire resist is a 50% damage reduction. When nades or goblin mortars are chucked your way, you will have that 50% fire damage reduction plus your innate 5% chance to resist stuns, to resist the grenades. So a 200 fire resist will be a 55% chance to resist nades. We have to assume our enemies have some measure of spell pen eventually, so that number might drop down to somewhere in the vicinity of a 45% chance to resist the grenades. This is the fire resist is important for multiple reasons, but I'll just leave it there for now, and I'll showcase it when we start talking about this. But generally, the fire resist is really important because it lets you grenade and goblin mortar the enemy rather consistently. But when they throw grenades or goblin mortars back to try to counter, which is the easy, well, if they do X, why don't I just do like mirror them? There's a stupidly high chance that it gets resisted, and so you just end up with an advantage. Super powerful fire resist. Also, we'll talk about the burst here in a second, just to refresh your guys' memory. When a mage is actively trying to kill you and you are playing correctly as a paladin, they can only really get... let me try to move the mic away here. The best they can do is like 2 frost bolts, so that would be like 2 2-second hard casts on you, and then 2 fire blasts, and that's it. At that point, you're successfully healing yourself. Hopefully, you're over healing yourself, and so forth and so on. A thought that did come to my mind while I was making this guide is, rather than Divine Light like over healing you. Okay, from a PvP perspective, Divine Light is nice, but I think it would be a more fascinating spell if it didn't suffer any pushback from damage. Because suddenly it's a holy light that it's a more powerful holy light that paladins that do not actually have a spiritual focus, so they don't have any pushback protection, can suddenly take, and it's also in the rune slot opportunity cost in the rune slot, where that's a big opportunity cost for them, right? Because paladins that can't heal themselves 100% have vindication. They 100% are some variant of deep ret. They're either deep ret or ret reckoning. They're control ret or they're ret reckoning. And I'm just like, that would actually be a fascinating opportunity cost to put in there, and it doesn't affect PvE at all. So I was like, yeah, that's an interesting idea. But let's do a refresher if a mage is actively trying to kill you. These yardages are pretty accurate, like a 0 yard, 10 yards. I actually took a picture of a ruler and posted it. So you'll see I can just scroll over here and they'll line up pretty good at like the 30-yard range mark. Okay, so for a refresher, if a mage is bursting on you, it almost always means that you are in a sheep. There's basically a dance and a war to get you in a sheep, but once you've gotten once the mage gets you in a sheep, they eat, they drink, and then they start doing their burst combo on you. I don't have it on the toolbar, which sucks. But what you're supposed to do is, as soon as the first frostbolt lands on you, this is just a quick refresher from my previous Paladin vs. Mage video. When the frostbolt hits you, you'll come out of sheep. They'll be about half a second, or a little bit over half a second, into casting their next sheep, because frost bolts and whatever the heck they're using, like Bay Fire Bolt or whatever the hell, in Season of Discovery, they have relatively slow travel times, which when the mage is bursting on you is a huge advantage to the mage. But as you're gonna see, it has a double-edged sword effect to it. Yeah, so rather than them being 2 seconds before they get out the next spell cast, they're going to be like, 1.4 seconds before they get out of the next spell cast. Your correct course of action as a paladin is to do 2 things. One is to observe whether that spell crit you or not. But more importantly, it's to freedom yourself. Your first course of action when you come out of the sheep is to freedom yourself, and it is to run away for about 1.5 seconds, right? Because that's basically your GCD. 1.5 seconds of runtime will get you about 12 yards away from the mage. Technically, the mage shouldn't be opening up on you at the 30-yard range, because you can already see you've completely screwed him. He should be opening up on you closer to like the 50 some or so odd range here. So this should be the situation after running for 0.5 seconds. There will be a frostbolt in the air coming after you, and the mage will start moving towards you. Once 1.5 seconds of freedom has ended, your next course of action is to start healing yourself, usually with a hard cast spell. The reason for this is because you want to eat the counter spell. While you are casting your hard cast heal spell, like a flash of light or holy light or whatever the heck it is, the mage will take the time to get a little bit closer to you before counter spelling you, right? So they'll wait for like the last second, which is why I suggest like flash of light. This is if they're playing 100% correctly. They'll get a little bit closer to you, about 10 yards or so closer to you, so they should be considerably closer before they actually counterspell you. In 1.5 seconds, you can run 13 yards, so we are underestimating yardage in both cases. I ran this guy about 12 yards. I'm running this guy about 10 yards. It usually plays out about this way. So they'll counterspell you. You'll notice that since you can cover 16 plus 1.2, since you can cover over 17 yards in a 2-second spell cast, our Frost Mage hero here, or our Mage hero here, can no longer Frostbolt you. So if he roots himself in place and he attempts to Frostbolt you, because you have freedom on, you can literally run like 17 yards away, and he's well outside of the 30-yard range mark. That's just literally how that works. So now that you're counterspelled, you as a paladin just run away in a straight line until the counterspell wears off. The only thing the mage can really do, he only has a few options really available to him. The first option is to just keep running after you. So both of you guys are basically running away in a straight line, and the two hit you with whatever instant cast spells they have available. Traditionally, this will be like literally 2 fire blasts. Okay, so this will just be the state of affairs for literally the next 10 seconds until your counterspell wears off. Option 2 is that the mage can, in fact, blink forward 20 yards, but you can see that's problematic because they're like literally right on top of you. And if they're dealing with a Reckoning Paladin or something similar like that, and this is Season of Discovery, so you can still use Crusader Strike even while counterspelled. It's very dangerous for them to try to get anywhere near that close to you. 20 yards is a bit too much. The more skilled ones can try to pull that off. If they're blinking towards you, however, they're basically the perfect grenade or a goblin mortar target at that point. Highly suggest you just grenade them because they don't have anything to really get out of the grenade at that point unless they want to. May I help you, sir? Unless they want to bubble or ice block and cancel. If they do blink forward and get right on top of you like this, they can get an extra frostbolt into you before you're able to get out of range of them. Typically, you just stand your ground and start beating on them, or you just keep running in a straight line. But it'll cost them like a frostbolt. This play doesn't end very well for the mage because they take a considerable amount of damage, and all they're really doing is forcing out some kind of defensive cooldown from you, but it's almost always in exchange for a defensive cooldown from them. So typically they'll just hit you with 2 fire blasts. Usually this is when they're actively trying to kill you. So if they see the first frostbolt crit and they see the second frostbolt crit, they might be encouraged to try to do a blink play towards you. But at that point, you're literally just like, what are you doing? And you just grenade stun them, bitch slap them around a little bit, and keep running. They might ice block cancel and try to cast another spell again. But at that point, you're just like, okay, I guess you get my like healing potion and my whipperroot tuber, or you get my goblin mortar, or you get my it just doesn't work. Basically they've traded like an ice block defensive cooldown for like one of your defensive cooldowns, which is not an ideal trade for them. If you don't believe me on all this, just test it. Literally, it's freedom yourself and run away in a straight line for 1.5 seconds. Start casting a Holy Light, catch a counter spell, and keep running away in a straight line. And very quickly, you'll discover that they really, really struggle to try to kill you in a burst. The fire resist really plays an effect here because one of their better bursts is double double fire blast. If they did the burst at too great of a distance away from you, then you could outrun the first frostbolt, and it doesn't work all that well. Let me take a drink of water here. They can try to grenade stun you too when you're running away and keep bursting on that. But again, they're just trading one of their more serious defensive cooldowns for one of your major defensive cooldowns. You'll notice that we don't even have Divine Steed on this list. If Blizzard is silly enough to keep Divine Steed in the game, which I am against, but I've come to the conclusion that the vast majority of the Paladin player base are mentally handicapped enough to actually need Divine Steed. But just know that if you're playing Paladin properly, Divine Steed just trivializes this because you literally get to use it defensively, and they just can't kill you anymore. They literally, it's just like, oh no, you got my 45-second defensive cooldown. Ooh. But generally speaking, if they grenade you and they try to cast another Frostbolt, there's a massive chance that you resist it. If you didn't resist it, you just eat the Frostbolt anyways, and then you grenade them back. They'll try to blink forward on top of you. You'll start bitch slapping them. Also, very quickly in this exchange, counterspell is going to start wearing off, and you can hodge stun them. It just doesn't play well. Worst case scenario, you end up just kind of rolling your eyes and giving them some kind of defensive ability, be that your whipperroot tuber, be that your if it's a duel, you'd be using major recombobulator. Be that Goblin Mortar or whatever the heck it is. So the fire resist is very important here. But just know that is how you're supposed to play it. Okay, cool. Now that we've covered defensive play, so you're not pressing W towards mages like a moron and getting deleted. If you press W towards a mage while they're bursting at you, their burst turns into something stupid like 4 frost bolts and like 2 fire blasts before you can even heal yourself. Now you might be asking, if frost, okay, what happens when I stop and heal myself and they like stop and frost bolt? Because a frost bolt's a 2-second cast, and you're like holy light, your actual worth a damn heal is 2.5 seconds. Isn't that an extra frost bolt they can get on you? The answer is no, not unless they spent the time to blink right on top of you, and at that point they're in Hodge stun range, and it's just a terrible place to be. The reason why that is a no is because of travel time. Frost bolts, you'll almost always, not just almost always, you will get off that holy light worth of healing into you before that frost bolt actually connects. Even though it's a 2-second cast, it does take a fair bit of time to travel, even 20 yards. All right, now that we talked about how to survive, let's talk about how to actually offense against a mage properly. So we're going to assume, and one sec, I need to cough here. Indeed. Get some tissue really fast. All right, good. Yeah, already 60 minutes. I'm like, damn, I'm drinking lots of water here. What's going on? All right. So when offensiving, that's the problem. I actually need to blow my nose. Let me pause the video really fast here. That's what's going on. All right, we're back. Cool. All right, so the important thing to note when you're offensive versing a mage is cast times, spell pushbacks, and the amount of distance you can cover in any given period of time. It's literally a relationship between your exorcism and their ice barrier and sheep. All right. So sheep in Season of Discovery is the classic WoW sheep, meaning she does suffer classic WoW pushback. So she has 1 second of spell pushback first, and then the next is 0.5 seconds, and then it's a quarter of a second. So if you're able to put 1 second of spell pushback on their sheep, it turns it into a 2.5 second spell cast. That's easily enough time for you to get within judgment range, which turns it into a 3 second spell cast. And at 3 seconds of spell cast, they can't even get it off on you at the 30-yard range mark before you start slapping them around in melee. This will change different. If you're a Holy Shock Paladin, the world will look a little bit different. If you're a Reckoning Paladin, they literally cannot afford to get bitch slapped into melee, so that just immediately forces out a blank. If you're a Ret Paladin, you have Repent to play with instead, which changes the dynamics here a little bit. You'll notice I haven't even mentioned Divine Steed at all, if that's still somehow in the game. Yada, yada, yada. It's important to note, however, that Ice Barrier may or may not exist on said mage. A few things about Ice Barrier. She lasts 60 seconds. She's on a 30-second cooldown. And she has no spell power ratio behind her to increase the HP of this shield. So this shield is always just 826 damage. Now, with the PvP damage reduction of 30%, this is enough damage absorption that it's going to take more than one exorcism or more than one spell to punch through this shield and cause spell pushback. But you'll note that this thing is on a 30-second cooldown and your exorcism is on a 7.5 second cooldown. So that gets really easy to counter very quickly. So, for example, there's an element of play with you as the Paladin where you're dancing around at like the 30-yard range mark against the mage. You'll go inside the 30-yard range mark. You'll blast them with an exorcism, and then you'll run away in a straight line because they can't sheep you. And you just kind of keep hovering around or keep chasing them around until they decide they want to try to eat and drink, or they decide that they want to try to sheep you. And you just make sure you nail them with that exorcism. So if it takes 2 exorcisms, know that you can very easily get 2 exorcisms. If you have a Avenging Shield as a cooldown, and you're willing to use like one-handed Reckoning, or you're doing like a one-handed playstyle, so every Paladin there is, know that you can very easily dart in, exorcism them, and then as you're running out, actually I would throw Avenger Shield, and then as you're running out, blast them with exorcism. They can't get the sheep off in time. So it becomes incredibly easy to wear this ice barrier down enough that your exorcisms start to punch through and cause spell pushback, yada yada yada. If you have Eye for an Eye on your Paladin, which out of all the Paladin builds, there's Holy Shock. It should be Shock Eye. There's Holy Reckoning, Heal Reckoning. There's Ret Reckoning, and then there's variations of Deep Ret. There's only 2 Paladins out of those Paladin options that do not have Eye for an Eye. That's Holy Reckoning and then Deep Prot Paladin specifically. If you have Eye for an Eye, then this basically becomes trivial because on the burst, they would have taken some Eye for an Eye reflect damage, which will 100% cause Exorcism to start punching through the shield. Mages can try to counter a little bit by stopping eating and drinking when you're in sheep to refresh Ice Barrier, to try to make it so that when after they burst on you, they can easily refresh Ice Barrier and do this weird little 30-yard range dance. But just know that you may or may not have to do this little 30-yard range dance to pick away at the Ice Barrier to be able to actually close on them from a 30-yard range. Worst case scenario, you'll just throw like a grenade at them to help cause a bit more damage. It really doesn't matter. But know that this is pretty consistently what you can do. All right, so let's actually look at what it looks like when you're making the plunge. When you're actually pressing W at the damn, let's say the mage is sitting at the 30-yard range mark and just spamming sheep, and you're at the 33-yard range mark about to press W. Based upon my tests, and they are not extensive tests, leeway does not exist in Season of Discovery, as near as I can tell. So it's not like this. The sheer act of pressing W is going to cause this sheep to start at the 33-yard range mark. It's going to start at the 30-yard range mark. Even if leeway does exist in the game, it's very easily counterable. Basically, by you pushing a little bit past the 30-yard range mark, and then right before the sheep is about to sheep you, you just backpedal. That'll make the range of the sheep go from 33 yards while you're pressing W towards them to suddenly 28 yards when you're backpedaling. Because the sheer act of moving in classic World of Warcraft causes spells to have plus 3-yard range, but if you're backpedaling, it causes them to have minus 2-yard range. So either way, you can get close enough to pull this off. If leeway does exist, it's a little bit more mechanically difficult, but it becomes much easier to pull off. If leeway doesn't exist, then it becomes academic and possibly a little bit more difficult to pull off, but also incredibly easy, as you're about to see. So the important thing to note here is that you can run, in classic World of Warcraft, a whopping 8, let's get a bigger number here, with movement, speed, and chance, ladies and gentlemen, you are running 8.64 yard. What the heck? How long was I paused? Oh man, okay, I'm trying to figure out when I possibly paused. No idea. Damn. Anyways, I'm not redoing this video. That is not happening. So I have no idea about the pause stuff. I was explaining how I don't think leeway is in the game. I was explaining about how I want to start getting offensive here, like what the offensive matchup looks like. Just know that your survivability... Oh, right. I was explaining about the dance, about the Paladin. I like the 30-yard range mark, like you're popping in and out and hitting them with Exorcism because you want some chip damage on this Ice Barrier. I was talking about how if you have... Eye for an Eye, that's not really a problem because you'll definitely have chip damage on this Ice Barrier. Just know that a single Exorcism is not going to punch through this Ice Barrier and cause spell pushback on a sheep. That is 100% not going to happen. So you need some chip damage on this. I might just be repeating myself at this point. But there's going to be a weird relationship here between how far you can run in a second. You can run 8.65 yards per second. The cooldown of your Exorcism, the cooldown of your Judgment being very close to 8 seconds. The fact that Ice Barrier has no spell power ratio behind her, so she's just an 800 ish shield, so you need like 2 spells to punch through her. but if you can punch through her, Sheep has classic World of Warcraft pushback. So it's 1 second at first, then half a second next, and then a quarter of a second after that. And as we're about to see, this is more than enough pushback for you to easily cover 30 yards and get within melee range or Hodge range of the mage. At that point, they basically have to blink away or start suffering issues. But if you can cover a distance against them casting Sheep at 30 yards, you better effing believe that you can do it at 20 yards. So once they start blinking away to try to live, the situation just becomes effectively a hell of a lot worse for them. So we're going to show you how you can cover this 30-yard range distance. I have tested this, and let's just get to it. All right, so there's no real leeway in Season of Discovery that I can tell, but if there is, you easily counter that by just backpedaling. So you'll push a little bit further here, wait for them to cast a Sheep. When Sheep is about like half a second away from being finished, you just backpedal a little bit. It'll cause the Sheep range to suddenly be 28 yards rather than 30 yards if you're standing still, or 33 yards if you're pressing W. So whether leeway exists or not, this will play out pretty much exactly the same. All right. Cool. We're back to where we were then. All right. Let me take a drink of water and we'll get started. All right. So, what we need to try to do as the Paladin is we need to basically try to get within the within the 10-yard range of the mage while still not being sheeped. If we can get within 10 yards of the mage while still not being sheeped, you can do all kinds of terrible things. Like you can Hodge stun them, which will cause them to blink away. You can put a Judgment stun in them, which will put another, like, quarter of a second or half a second worth of spell pushback on them, which is really, really bad. Also, Judgment's not on a GCD, which means Hodge stun is still available. Terrible, terrible, awful, no good things. So the question becomes, can we close 20 yards without being sheeped? And the answer is sheep is a 1.5 second cast, and we can cover 8.64 yards per second. I don't know why it's 6.5. 4 yards per second. So we can cover a whopping about 13 yards before the mage sheeps us at the 30-yard range mark. So as you can see here, this is not 20 yards, and there's no effing way in hell that we can get within Judgment range or Hodge stun range. This is classic WoW, where you don't have Exorcism or anything like that, right? There's no way in classic World of Warcraft for you to cover the 30-yard distance and get within Hodge range, or you to get within Judgment range, or you to get within 10 yards of the mage whatsoever in classic WoW. But this is Season of Discovery, and in Season of Discovery, you have Exorcism. And Exorcism is going to, if it punches through the shield and causes damage, is going to push back the sheep casting time by 1 second, which means now this is a 2.5 second cast. Let's just clear all this. So rather than it being a 1.5 second cast, now it's a 2.5 second cast. And if I multiply that by 8.64, you can see that, yeah, we are barely getting within range of the mage to judge them, Hodge stun them, all that stuff. We can cover exactly 21.6 yards within their 2.5 second spellcast. So we are clear. What you are doing is you're pressing W versus the mage. You'll watch them cast sheep. You'll see the cast bar. It's actually in your battle net. The cast bar is actually in your user UI to turn on, if you don't know. For reals? What the hell is going on here? So Blizzard just interrupted my damn video to tell me that it's shutting off. Okay, that's cute. I'll find the cast bar UI, just in case you have no idea where it is. I don't use add-ons, so I'm kind of tickled pink that they have the cast bar UI. I just had to kind of guess a second. But basically, you wait until the sheep is like, about 40%, 45% along on a spell cast, and then you blast them with Exorcism. That's an important thing to note, because if they're like half a second into their spell cast and you push them back by a second, you've only pushed them back by 0.5 seconds, and then it won't work effectively. Also, it's still plenty of time for your GCD to come off of cooldown. It's pretty much absolutely disgusting. Let me go try to find the UI really fast. I don't want the PTR. I want actually Wrath Classic. Okay, I'll attempt to find it really quick, just for the hell of it. All right, so hopefully that proves that through an exorcism and a judgment, if the exorcism is punching through ice barrier, that you as a paladin in Season of Discovery can actually close the distance. You will literally be like right here when sheep is like 0.15 of a second left to go. So basically, as long as you're exorcisming them there about here, right, about a little over 8 yards in your run, you hit them with exorcism. And then as long as you're just spamming judgment, you will easily get the extra 0.5 seconds of pushback on them, and you'll be right about here, and it's not a GCD or anything like that, so you can easily hodge stun them if you want to. If you're a reckoning paladin, they don't really have a choice. They have to blink. Because that extra half a second is going to a pushback is going to give you like another 0.4 yards, so they might have to blink away. Worst case scenario, you're hodge stunning them, and then they're blinking away from you. So I'll end it right here and assume that they blinked, and we'll also assume that it cost you hodge stun. I forgot to actually put hodge stun up here. I really should, but it doesn't matter. We'll assume it costs you hodge stun right there. Let me find the UI for us really fast. I was tickled pink to actually find this UI. Yeah, I should be out here mining Mithril right now. You can see that it's 2 a.m. Server time. It's even 2:15 server time. That's branding for you. I go into options. I go into controls. No, interface. It should be turned on. Always show nameplates. Minions. It's kind of down at the bottom, if I recall correctly. Display borders. Defaulted display. Show enemy cast bars. Yeah, so it's an options interface, and you just activate show enemy cast bars. Super, super important. I played for years without that. Now that I have it, I'm just like, wow, this makes my life so much easier. But it is what it is. So let's get out of here and back to the damn video. All right, cool. So let's say the mage blinks away from you by like 20 yards, right? So the mage, and we'll give him like the maximum 20 yards. So he just blinks away from you 20 yards, like out of your hodge stun, and he tries to go for both of you are running away for like 1.5 seconds. He's running away, you're chasing him. And he turns and he tries to do a sheep on you again. He tries to rinse and repeat what just happened. Well, you don't have to follow him. You can literally run away. You can, let me think about this. So your option one, of course, is to run away and reset it back to the 30-second range mark and just rinse and repeat. I don't really. Your rinse and repeat will come sooner before his blink comes off a cooldown. So that's option one. Option two, which is the one I like better, is you just keep pressing W towards this poor mage, and now is basically the perfect time for you to use Avenger Shield, or for you to use a Goblin Mortar. If you have Rebuke also kind of sort of... Rebuke doesn't actually work here. What am I talking about? You'd have to use the grenade. All right, cool. Anyways, our opponent is about 25 yards away from us, effectively. Maybe a little bit more, like 26 or something like that. And that's if we're giving him, like, the best possible 20-yard range sheep. Usually mages are a little bit closer to you than this. If we Avenger Shield them and we cause their spell to what am I trying to say? If we grenade them, they obviously have to use their displacement. If we Avenger Shield them, can we cover the distance? So we didn't grenade stun them. We're assuming we don't have Hodge stun right now. Can we Avenger Shield them? Yeah, so in 2.5 seconds, multiplied by 8.64 yards, you can see that we'll cover 21 yards. That is within melee range. So if you literally just press W at them and you Avenger Shield them, yes, your Judgment is on cooldown. Yes, your Exorcism is on cooldown right now. But you will get within the 5 yards of melee range with them. You will deliver a melee hit to them, which will cause even more spell pushback. If you're a Reckoning Paladin, they don't want to deal with that. If you want to play it safe, you literally just grenade stun them. They're 25 yards away. Literally just throw a grenade. Like, just whatever. Just use your damn grenade here. It really doesn't matter. You also notice we still theoretically have Divine Steed up if Blizzard's silly enough to give us that. But you just throw a grenade at them. It's not that big of a deal. Okay, so here's why it's not that big of a deal. And we're just going to chuck a grenade in their general direction. So yeah, you're like, whatever. You throw a grenade at them. In that grenade, the mage doesn't have a choice but to let you get, like, almost within melee range of them. And then their next course of action, of course, is going to be to use displacement. And if you recall, they displaced at the 30-yard range mark. Okay. Now here's why I don't really mind displacement as a spell, because it's not the same as it has some major downsides to it. For starters, all blinks cost 500 mana, which is literally like 9% of a fully geared mage's mana bar. They have like 6,000, maybe 7,000 mana to play with, and blinks costing 500 mana is just awful. Displacement is like 450 mana, so that's close to like 500 mana. The ice barriers, as you can see down there, are damn near 500 mana. This is staying alive is extraordinarily mana intensive for the mage. That might wear on them over time. But what really doesn't bother me about displacement is it's not the same as a blink, right? So when the mage blinked away from us, he got 20 yards distance on us. When they displacement back, because they don't want us to let us in melee range, they're not going to be 20 yards away from us. They're going to be like 15 yards away from us, 14 yards away from us. What's worse about blink is that it puts them... it's extraordinarily predictable. It's going to put them exactly back where they were before. And it's going to give them the exact facing that they were before, before they blinked. So, for example, the mage is literally facing this way, right? Because when he blinked, he had to face the direction that he was blinking, which means that if you literally just turn around immediately and start running at them, it's not like they can press W. In the time it takes you to turn around, it's the time it's going to take them to turn around. They are literally, at best, 14 yards away from you. And that is not enough distance for them to cast a sheep. So if they decide that they want to run away for 1.5 seconds, you chase them for 1.5 seconds, and they decide that they want to try to cast a 1.5 second sheep, multiply that by 8.2864. You're going to be within melee range. Melee range is 5 yards, so you can cover 18 yards roughly before they can get that sheep off. You're going to bitch slap them in melee before they can get that sheep off. That's going to cause another like 1.5 seconds worth of spell pushback if you do it correctly. Like literally you auto attack them, that'll be 1 second of spell pushback. You wait half a second, then you feed in your Crusader Strike or your Divine Storm or whatever. That's another half a second of spell pushback. At this point, it's highly suggested that you use... You'll notice that if you have Rebuke, this is the perfect time to use Rebuke. You still have Avenger Shield available to you because we use grenades, so you either have Rebuke or Avenger Shield here. Let me get rid of these arrows really fast. Bad times for the mage. This is also why I like Avenger Shield here, because let's say that they decide that they just want to keep running away in a straight line, right? They're like, fuck that, I'm just going to keep running away in a straight line until I get my blink back naturally, even though their blink has basically been reset. I suppose what they could do, and this is a thought that actually hadn't occurred to me, is that I guess it did occur to me, but I dismissed it for the reasons I'll talk about. So in theory, they could displace here, and since it resets their cooldown, they could blink like another like 20 yards away from you, right? So they're off into Narnia. But at that point, the issue becomes number one, after the displacement, they had to run for like 1.5 seconds, which is all the time in the world you need to get an Avenger shield on them. And after they blink, the Avenger shield will still be on them. Actually, I take that back. They can take a rune that causes them to cleanse now, so they might be able to cleanse the Avenger shield slow off of them. The reason why I 100% ended up dismissing this double blink idea is for a fair few reasons. One, if they engage in the double blink method, their mana situation is absolutely terrible, and they're basically just back to square one, right? Like this whole formula of us being at the 30-yard range before the Paladin presses W at you has effectively been reset. They've taken a couple exorcisms in damage. They've taken at least one judgment in damage. They may or may not. They've taken like an Avenger shield in damage. They've spent like a ridiculous amount of mana, like over. Let me think. Yeah, they've spent like 27% of their mana bar on blinks. Alone. You feed Ice Barrier into that, and they've spent like 36% of their mana bar on 3 blinks and 1 Ice Barrier. They've suffered chip damage. When the hell do they get to sheep you? If they used blink to survive, it's just terrible. So they can't really get a sheep on you, and you're just kind of chasing them around like a weirdo. If Divine Steed exists in the game, like now is the perfect time to just Divine Steed after them, and things are going to play out how I'm about to describe. If it's open world PvP, you can literally just attack the nearest mob, and they can just literally never sheep you. If it's a duel, or if it's a battleground, what typically happens right now under these circumstances is the mage has nowhere to run, because they've literally double blinked themselves into the dual circle edge. And the reason for this is because of us having to run away from sheep. You remember at the start of this combat, we were in a sheep, right? And then we had to run away in a straight line for well over 10 seconds, literally like 11.5 seconds. We had to run away in a straight line due to counterspell. This whole fight started at the edge of the duel arena. Like the edge of the duel arena is literally it's literally right here. It's this red line right here is quite literally the edge of the duel arena, because we had to run away in a straight line due to counterspell with our freedom up. So it's like, okay, yeah, he double blinked, but now he has nowhere to go, if you're following me on this. So it's like, okay, what am I talking about here? So very quickly, you're going to find yourself back in this scenario, because he's got no blinks, so he has to keep running away in a straight line. So if you literally just chase him, he has no blinks. He'll hit the dual circle edge and then start being forced to run along the dual circle edge. But your best course of action is literally just to push him up against the dual circle edge right here. I'll just put it right here. And then to literally just hover at the 30-yard range mark, blasting him with exorcisms. They cannot sheep you without an offensive blink, and if they offensive blink, you're just going to get on. You can just close the distance spectacularly. This is a terrible, awful, no good situation for a mage. What's worse is you still have stupid things to play with. You have PvP Trinket, you have Goblin Mortar, you have Gnomish Netomatic, your Avenger Shield is coming off a cooldown. It doesn't do anything except more damage. Your Judgment is there for you. Your Exorcism is there for you. Everything is just terrible. They're basically gonna suffer chip damage and mana issues until they die, and there's really no effective way for them to get a sheep off on you. This is why I say that they're probably just going to die out here to chip damage. All right, worst case scenario. Let's say the mages start using goblin mortars and grenades to try to get a sheep off on you, because that's the only real consistent way that they can effectively get a sheep off on you. Believe it or not, because Lord knows they can't offensive blink towards you. That's not going to work. If you're able to get on top of them at a 30-yard range, it's not going to work for them to offensively blink and try to sheep you. That sure as hell is going to work very well, especially if you can find your Seal of Justice button and then put an auto attack and a Crusader Strike with Seal of Justice into them. Absolutely terrible. We'll come back to that in a second. This is one of the reasons why the fire resist is so good, because it's going to give you a damn near a 50% chance to resist grenades, to resist goblin mortars, which is terrible for the mage. But let's say the mage does get a grenade stun off on you. He does take the opportunity to put you into a sheep. You can literally PvP trinket out of it and continue blasting them with exorcisms and Avenger shields, which is terrible from their perspective. You can just use bubble and press W. Like, our boy is pressed up against a wall with no blinks. What the hell do you think is going to happen if you start pressing forward and he sheeps you and you just PvP trinket out of it and you just keep pressing forward? What if you bubble and you just keep pressing forward? Our boy here has no blink. He's going to have to ice block. Okay, cool. So let's say that I had to use PvP trinket to get on top of the mage here, right? So PvP trinket is gone. Mage has to ice block. I literally just stand there and look at him. Literally, I wouldn't even stand there and look at him. What you end up doing is you end up backing up a little bit. You're like, all right, whatever. I'll just wait, like, literally outside of melee range for you to do something. Like, I don't care what you do, but I'm just going to wait right here while you're in that ice block. So they sit in the ice block. They wait for their blink. When it comes out of ice block, they blink a whopping, God knows, like 20 yards distance away from you. We find ourselves in this stupid little chase again. After the blink is the perfect time to Avenger shield them. Yes, they can theoretically cleanse it, I suppose, now if they took that rune. However, they're still in a GCD, which means it's going to be about a second of slow or so, because Avenger shield does have some travel time to it before they can cleanse off the slow. That's going to be enough for you to get 4 yards distance closer, which may or may not put you within judgment range. And then this is just life until they can literally blink again. This is so much mana that the mage is burning through, and he still is nowhere closer to getting off of a sheep, especially if this cost him a grenade, right? Which is just terrible. So you just end up chasing them around all over the world, just constantly putting chip damage into them until they die. You'll notice that we haven't used Divine Steed, we haven't used Goblin Mortar, we haven't used Gnomish Netomatic, and the only thing, like, literally, if you Gnomish Netomatic this guy, you're going to get out the second Ice Barrier, and the thing will just play out all over again. And then if you use Goblin Mortar on them, they have no ice blocks left, and they're dead. And it's just like, all right, this is completely stupid. Let's go back to the other option here really quickly. So option one for them is a double blink off into Narnia, which they'll basically slam into a wall. That'll happen to them a lot in battlegrounds, or that'll happen to them definitely in duels. Even in open world, it's problematic, so you can just, like, chase after them forever, because they can't sheep you in open worlds, because you just, like, aggro the nearest Paladin pet. If you're a Reckoning Paladin, things look interesting, because the mage literally can't let you touch them. Even if you're a one-handed Paladin, they can't let you touch them because of all the chip damage they've been taking this entire time. From judgments and exorcisms and thorium grenades and Avenger shield. They can't let you touch them even with a one-handed weapon, especially not in Season of Discovery. If you're not a Reckoning Paladin, you have Holy Shock you can feed into this equation. If you're a Deep Ret Paladin, you have Repent to work with. Both Holy Shock and Repent have eye for an eye to them. It's just gross and disgusting. Yes, they will be putting up ice barriers periodically. Their only real chance to sheep you is with an ice barrier. So they put a nice fresh ice barrier on them, and suddenly you need an Exorcism and a Judgment to punch through it, or you need Avenger Shield and an Exorcism to punch through it, or you need a Grenade and an Exorcism to punch through it, something like that. So a fresh Ice Barrier will go up. They'll stop and try to sheep you. You still have cooldowns to use, though. So if you want to, you have two options, of course. You can reset to the 30-yard range mark and do it all over again. Or you can just use those cooldowns to punch through the Ice Barrier and cause spell pushback. And yada, yada, yada. So it's just a fascinating dance between you and the mage. But let's go back to the first displacement. So this was where they were when they displaced. If you recall, they blinked out here, and then we grenaded them, and we ran up to them about here, and then they displaced precisely back to the 30-yard range mark. And this is when you as the Paladin are facing this direction, and the mage is also facing your back. You spin around, he spins around. Let's say he tries to cast Sheep here. What happens? Well, there's a literally like a 14-yard distance between you. You can easily get within melee range. At this point, since you don't have Hodge Stun, it is highly suggested that you use Seal of Justice. Okay, so if you're a Reckoning Paladin, the mage just dies here. Like, there is no sheep opportunity. If you're a Holy Shock Paladin, you have Holy Shock you can feed into the mix. If you are a Deep Ret Paladin, you have Repent that you can feed into the mix right now. But let's assume you don't have any of that. You don't have Divine Steed. You got no trinkets, no nothing. Literally just feed Seal of Justice into the mix. Because the sheer act of smacking the mage in the face with your auto attack will cause 1 second of spell pushback. And then you can literally see, it'll also give you a % chance to stun them with Seal of Justice equal to your weapon swing timer times 10%. So if you're swinging a 4-second weapon, a swing timer, it'll have a 40% chance to stun them for 2 seconds and reset the sheep cooldown. Yeah, so you auto attack them, watch the 1 second of spell pushback. You then wait a second, and then you feed Crusader Strike or Divine Storm into the mix, which will have another 40% chance to stun them for 2 seconds. There is a chance here that they actually get the sheep off, but there's also an 80% chance or a little bit less than 80% chance. Actually, I do think it's 80% chance in this case, that you stun them for 2 seconds, completely resetting the sheep timer. They have the choice of either sitting there for 2 seconds and taking more auto attacks to the face, which you would be wise to hold. You'd be wise to just hold your auto attack and stand there and stare at them. Literally turn off your auto attack. If you get the 2 seconds done, just turn off your auto attack and stand there and stare at them. Wait for them to be 1 second into their sheep cast before you auto attack them again. Why? Because your Judgment's likely coming off a cooldown. Your Exorcism's likely coming off a cooldown. One of these is coming off a cooldown, which means that you just get to hit them again with a two-handed weapon basically for free. You can also switch to a fast one-handed weapon if you want to do it that way. But you can just go for another Hodge Stun with your stupid two-handed weapon and more spell pushback. It's so much chip damage. It's almost alarming. And if they do get the sheep off, you still have Bubble, you still have PvP Trinket. It's just oh God, right? But if you're Reckoning Paladin, they can't let you do this. So they will blink. And they will either blink 20 yards this way, or they will try to blink back this way. But if they blink back this way, the exact same thing plays out. They're not further than 20 yards away from you, which is where they can start getting the sheep in. As you saw, they need about 21.5 yards of distance away from you before they can start getting a sheep off effectively. If they don't have that, then it's a problem. So, of course, if they blinked this direction, which we already saw, they will have enough distance to get the sheep off on you. But you can literally just play the 30-yard range game and push them and shove them up against a wall, basically. You also still have Avenger Shield and stuff to play with. If you are a Rebuke Paladin, now's the perfect time to rebuke them if they let you get on top of them. So it's just kind of whatever. If they blink this way, yeah, they're not running into the wall. which is nice, but they're out of blinks, which means that you can start No Machine-Matic is suddenly an ice block or die situation from them. Goblin Mortar is now an ice block or die situation from them. They have no choice but to run away in a straight line for a whopping 15 seconds, which means you're going to pump 2 exorcisms into the back of their head, which is even more chip damage. It's just terrible. Terrible, 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 and awful. And you'll notice that this entire video, I haven't even mentioned Divine Steed. I'm assuming worst case scenario, you had to use Divine Steed defensively to stay alive. But if you have Divine Steed, it makes this matchup just insanely trivialized. Now, again, the best way for a mage to actually get a sheep off on you is to Tidal Charm you, Goblin Mortar you, Grenade Stun you, do a fresh Ice Barrier, and try to sheep you at the 30-yard range mark, like stuff like that. But there's lots of play arounds against it. If you have enough fire resist that those things just kind of whiff on you, that's a really big problem. You still have Bubble in your inventory. You still have Blessing or Divine Protection, more than likely, as another defensive cooldown. This is actually a really hard matchup for a mage. What makes it even harder is I haven't even covered the sheer terrifying amount of mana that this mage has been expending. I can go over it really fast if you want. So it's damn near 300 mana per Frostbolt. Yeah. I'm right about this, right? Frostbolt. It's the same for Frostfire Bolt. They have about the exact same mana cost. I want to... can I not spell Frost? Can I not spell Bolt? Both? Oh, I'm not on the internet, I bet. Yeah, okay, that's better. Frostbolt. Oh, that's probably where I paused the video earlier, was when I went to type in stuff. Yeah, okay, that sucks, I guess. Oh, well, whatever. I'll try to remember it then. Frostbolt. Bastard. Bolt. Double bastard. Refresh. Frostbolt. Oh, look, it exists. Oh, Frostfire Bolt is a separate one. Yeah, 14% of base mana. We will remember this. Frostbolt. Thank you. I want the rank 11 Frostbolt, level 60, right? Yeah, 290 mana. They're about 300 mana. Fire Blast. That might be one word. Fire Blast, rank 7. She's like 350 mana. Yeah, I want this. Okay. And I want this to be like 28. All right, so we spent like 290 mana. We spent like 290 mana on 2 Frostbolts. We've spent what was it, like 350 on the Fire Blasts, I want to say, or was it 320? 340. Okay, good to know. 340. We've done like 2 Fire Blasts here. They almost always feed in another Frostbolt while you're trying to heal yourself to full. So you've come out of the counterspell, you're going for a Holy Light or a Divine Light. They will go for that Frostbolt just in case that Frostbolt crits you. Because if that Frostbolt crits you, it might just do enough damage that they can throw like a grenade at you and try to go all in from there. Sometimes they try to throw a grenade at you when you get out of the counterspell and you're trying to heal yourself to go all in from there. But as you saw, they kind of need that grenade to put a sheep in you. So if they throw the grenade and they stun you, you just kind of roll your eyes and you basically bubble at that point, or you PvP trinket and you use like some healing potions or something like that. It'll cause defensives to get out of you, but it's nothing that you can't handle. But they typically throw that other Frostbolt there. They have 100% already used an Ice Barrier. At some point during this whole spiel, they might use a second Ice Barrier. It just is what it is. And they've had to do a Displacement, which is 350 mana. And they've had to do... My bad, it's 450 mana. And then they've had to do at least 2 Blinks, which is like 500 mana, right? That's how much mana they spent so far. And they haven't been able to drink yet. And this is before we've used like bubble offensively to make them suffer even more on the drinking. This is before we've used PvP trinket to make them suffer even more on the drinking. In other words, if they turn you into a sheep, literally just wait 6 seconds until they're about to drink for Exorcism and Avenger Shield cooldown, and then just PvP trinket out of the sheep and blast them with Exorcism and get into the 30-yard range hover gameplay, and just refuse to let them drink. This is before we've done any skeleton summon shenanigans, like we summoned the 4,800 skeleton pet from a offhand spell book. He lasts a minute. He has 4,800 HP. You can put blessings on him. You can heal him. You literally just put blessing a sacrifice on him and let him go. That way, if the mage turns you into a sheep, since you have exorcism, you wouldn't even do that. You just put blessing of freedom on him and let the skeleton pet chase down the mage. The skeleton pets have 15% movement speed increase. They're like a mob. Which means it's really hard for a mage to run away from them, and you can easily just start blasting the mage with exorcisms. If the mage sheeps you, you just put Blessing of Sacrifice on the skeleton pet. It completely wastes an entire reset for the mage, meaning they can't eat and drink. You can make if the chip damage warfare and everything isn't working for you, if you don't do enough damage for whatever reason, blah, 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 know that a mana war is going to probably kill the mage anyways. Like, literally, you can not let them drink for, like, exactly 1 million years if you want to. Haven't even talked about the arcane resist stuff that I've been discovering yet. Bada bing, bada boom. But that just basically, the arcane resist stuff just makes certain trinkets, especially like the AQ40 trinket that gives you 100 all resists, but blah, 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 blah. Or future trinkets that give you arcane resist, or an arcane resist suit swap when they get low mana. Like, that's my master plan. If I was in a high level duel tournament, I would engage them with a mana war at first, assuming that they could counter the chip damage and all that stuff. And when they drop to like 1/3 mana, I would take the opportunity at the 30-yard range hover tactics, because they are letting you drop combat at the 30-yard range. They don't really have a choice to do that, to swap into like a more heavy arcane resist suit to start really wearing on the sheeps. I have a couple videos on that. That's just more food for thought, I suppose. But let's just add all this up together so you can see how bad it is. Times 3, I think. And then we want 342 of these plus 340 equals, okay, so that covers all that. 248's 1,450. All right, so let's add 480 plus 480 plus 450 plus 1,000. Yeah. All right. Mages have about a 6k mana bar. If you give them their mana gem crystal, they got like 6,500-ish mana to play with in PvP. They've already spent 4,000 mana, and they've taken God knows how many hits to the face. They've taken 3 exorcisms by now. They've taken an Avenger's Shield. They've taken at least 1 Judgment. They've taken a Thorium Grenade. Like, I can total it up. Thorium Grenade's going to be like 500. Exorcism, when you get your spell power gear, is going to be like 500-ish on average, especially if you factor in like critical strikes. Judgment, they might have taken like, we'll say 400 on average from Judgment, because it can crit. Is a holy spell, so there's a very good likelihood that it'll crit. Avenger's Shield, they might take 500. She can also crit. So there's at least 2. Well, one of these is a grenade, one of these is an exorcism, one of these is an Avenger's Shield, one of these is a Judgment. And you're putting multiple exorcisms into them, to be perfectly honest with you. So they've probably taken like another exorcism or 2. And no, I'm not joking. Under these combat circumstances, that extra exorcism might be a little bit too much for the sequence that we've been analyzing. But again, there's repeated explanations of play the 30-yard range, pin them up against the wall. So if they're like pinned up against this wall over here, you just keep blasting them and blasting them and blasting them. Because when they're running away in this straight line like we talked about, they don't have another blink for 15 seconds. If you're within the exorcism range, that's 2 more exorcisms. It just is what it is. So that's 500 times 5 equals, and then plus 4. Yeah, so they've taken like, 2,300 HP worth of damage. They might have had like 2 ice barriers in that amount of time, so it's like 1,600, reducing it by 1,600 damage. So they're down like 1,300 HP. If you're a Holy Shock Paladin, that's going to be even worse. If you're a Repent Paladin, that's going to be even worse. If you're a Reckoning Paladin, you have the Death Touch, so things play out a little bit more differently. But yeah, if it's like eye for an eye, you could easily add like another 600 damage taken to this without breaking a sweat. If it's a Repent Paladin, that means you probably bitch slapped him a few times. So at that point, it's well and truly over 2,000 HP worth of damage. Mages only have about 4,000. They literally have 3,950 HP when fully PvP geared in Classic World of Warcraft. And I'm talking like whether it's tier 3 full gear or tier 2 full gear or tier 2.5 full gear or Marshal's gear, doesn't matter. They have 3,950 HP. If they take spell penetration items, and that number drops significantly to like 3,700-ish. And we've already calculated that they've taken around about 2,000 HP worth of damage to their hit point bar already. That's more than 50% of their life has been chunked down through chip damage. You start feeding in Bubble, you start feeding in a PvP Trinket to cause even more chip damage. It's just disgusting. All right, so to recap, the important takeaways from this video are: if you are stuck in a sheep and a mage is bursting on you, you immediately freed them and you run away in a straight line. You start healing yourself as soon as possible. Once you eat the counter spell, you continue running away in a straight line, and the mages cannot kill you. They can't really kill you. Worst case scenario, they might force out like a divine protection. Whoop-de-effing do. All right? Plenty of time in this sequence of events. They might force out your divine steed. They might force out your divine protection. They might force out a trinket defensively. They might force out a grenade defensively. It really doesn't matter. There's plenty of time in this sequence for all manner of those things to come off a cooldown. It's perfectly fine. Let me take a drink of water here. That's what you're supposed to do defensively. And of course, your offensive play will starts at the 30-yard range mark. You literally press W towards the mage. You wait until the sheep that they're trying to cast on you is like, 40% through its cast bar timer, somewhere around there. Then you blast them with Exorcism. Your Exorcism should punch through the ice barrier if you set it up correctly. If you need to, when they're bursting on you, you could have blasted them with Exorcism right there. So you freed them yourself, you blast them with, you run away for 1.5 seconds, you blast them with Exorcism, you keep running away for 1.5 seconds. And then you go for the Flash of Light. Then you catch a counter spell, then you keep running away for until the counter spell wears off. The only Paladin that can't really pull that off very well is Shock Eye specifically. And the reason why Shock Eye specifically can't pull that off very well is you only have a 10-second freedom, unlike every other Paladin that has a 16-second freedom on a 20-second cooldown. But you're a Shock Eye Paladin, which means you have eye for an eye, which means you didn't need the Exorcism to punch through Ice Barrier anyways. But if they refreshed Ice Barrier and suddenly you need another Exorcism, you can do it that way. Yada, 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 blah, 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 blah. But basically, as long as there's some chip damage on the Ice Barrier, you can just press W at them, then give the sheep a 1 second spell pushback with Exorcism damage, and then just start spamming Judgment. You will get within Judgment range to do damage to them, or you can just spam Hodge. It'll cause the exact same effect, but you'll do a little bit less damage. Just keep chasing them. Chase, chase, chase. Do not be afraid at any point in time that you feel uncomfortable. Like if the mage is casting sheep and your stuff's on cooldown, to literally just run away. To literally just outrange the sheep spell and get within this 30-yard range mark and just waste time. Time is on your side. As long as you're not letting them eat and drink as well or as much as they want to, time is on your side. They are going to run out of mana eventually. The only counter to this, and I've left this for the very, very end of the video, just so mages don't know what the hell I'm talking about. The only real counter to this for the mage, and there's two of them. One of them is to cast sheep faster, right? So they have like a Icy Veins rune. Do I still have Wowhead up? Yeah. Okay. Tools, Gear Planner, Majors, Gnome. Let's go find Icy Veins. I'm curious what its opportunity costed against. Talents. Game? Hello? Okay. Fingers of Frost. No. Icy Displacement. No. I also want to see what the cleanse. Advanced Warding, I think, is the cleanse. Remove Greater Curse. Yeah, remove Greater Curse, a harmful magical effect from a friendly target. Okay. That's opportunity costed against Deep Freeze. That's also something that they could theoretically use to get off a sheep on you. However, they can't Deep Freeze you if you have Freedom up. Also Hot Streak and Temporal Anomaly. Interesting. But I think it's Icy Veins. That's the real opportunity cost here. Where the hell is it? Icy Veins, Arcane Surge, Living Flame, Mass Regeneration. Yeah. So if they have Icy Veins, they can't heal themselves very effectively. Okay, interesting. But if they heal themselves all over the place, costs a lot of mana. So they end up in this weird catch-22 where it's like they either lose an HP war, or they lose a mana war, or they lose both. Icy Veins hastens your spell casting, increasing casting speed by 20%, reducing pushback suffered from damaging attacks while casting by 100%, last 20 seconds. You will know if you're dealing with an Icy Veins mage pretty early on, and it is one way that they can consistently get sheeps off on you, but it doesn't really... having to use Icy Veins defensively in order to get a sheep off on you, and therefore not allowing them to use it offensively on you as a paladin, is a big damn problem. It does last 20 seconds, however, so they would have to immediately go into some offense. This is one way that they can make their offense a little bit more potent, is to use Icy Veins. There is, of course, the Mage Blackwing Lair class trinket, which also gives them 20% spell haste. But at that point, they're using a trinket to get a sheep off on you, which is not the greatest thing in the world, because they're like, I'm gonna cast this sheep faster, and you're like, I Goblin Mortar you, and it's like, we traded trinkets, yay! Oh shit, there's still a paladin running at me. You know what I mean? So yeah, it can get interesting. But somewhere in this dance, despite all their attempts to do things to the contrary, the mage is going to run out of mana, or they're going to have HP issues, or yada, yada, yada. This is why you will get sheeped. You will get sheep to find out certain things, right? So they'll grenade stun you, they'll put a sheep on you, they'll Goblin Mortar you, they'll sheep stun you, they'll Tidal Charm you, they'll sheep stun you, they'll Icy Veins and sheep stun you, they will use their insert trinket here and get a sheep off on you, right? But they can't really kill you all that well on a sheep if you're built correctly. And at that point, it becomes a mana war on your end. Tier 2 is really good for this because she's very, very thick in the mana bar. You don't want to be low in the mana bar when you're trying to do this, unless you have Repent to play with. Holy Shock Paladins just obviously aren't going to be low in the mana bar, blah, 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 blah. The matchup is very dynamic and interesting. There's a lot of things the mages can do. There's a lot of things the paladins can do. But the matchup, in my experience, is actually paladin favored. Then, of course, there's that arcane resist thing. Okay, so that's the first thing a mage can do to try to counter this stuff. The second thing a mage can do is, if they know how to drink run, they can kind of solve the mana war issue. Maybe not the chip damage issue. I'm not even sure drink running is going to be enough. What the hell is drink running? Well, I explain it in other paladin videos. I'm not going to explain it here, just in case a mage has shown up to look at what paladins are being told to do to counter them. And that way, if you've watched other videos of mine, you'll know what the hell drink running is. Holy Saxy Boy does it spectacularly. That's where I learned how to do it from. Yeah. Anyways, on the video here and Deus Vult. But if you know how to drink run and they don't quite know how to drink run, you'll have a significant advantage. So learn how to drink run. Anyways, on the video here and Deus Vult, boys. Oh, yeah, and of course, I haven't even mentioned, what's it called? Divine Steed, right? We use Divine Steed for absolutely nothing in this entire sequence of events. GG's, right? So they're like, I see veins, I burst on you. I do this, I burst on you. You're just like, waka, 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 waka with your movement speed buff. Whoop-de effing do. Anyways, end the video, day is full. I gotta go do some mining. Yay! Patreon, and buy me a coffee down in the description. So saith the wife, in case she's checking these things these days. Anyways, day is full, boys. Oh, the last thing I wanted to say was the reason why this is the first video that I'm doing is because it's the video that I thought the most about so far. It's the matchup that I'm most experienced with at this point. And in theory, if you can catch a mage and or cause chip damage to them, it's kind of like, you know, if you can dodge a wrench, you can dodge a ball. If you can pressure a mage and put chip damage on them and get on top of them and get into them a melee without them being able to do anything using spell pushback mechanics and exorcism, you can do that to so many other classes. It's borderline disgusting. Like, you know, oh, there's a shaman over there and he's casting lightning bolts on me. Guess how many fucking yards you can cover and bitch slap his ass. He can't even get off a lightning bolt. Literally, your first exorcism will push it back to a 3-second spell cast. That'll get you within judgment range. Your judgment range will push it back to a 3.5-second spell cast. They might have Eye of the Storm, which means that if your exorcism crit, then you can't quite do that. You'll be like, oh, what if they have Grounding Totem? Well, Grounding Totem's on a 15-second cooldown, and Exorcism is something you can use at 30-yard range and being hypermobile. And it's on a 7.5-second cooldown. You figure it the fuck out. Like, what did you do? Stand still and watch him put down a Grounding Totem and then watch him cast a lightning bolt? Were you waiting at the 30-yard range mark for him patiently to come off his 1.5-second GCD? Like, is that what you were doing? Did you watch him put a Grounding Totem down and then run away for 1.5 seconds while you were chasing him for 1.5 seconds and you just decided to not exorcism the Grounding Totem out of existence? Like, what are you doing at this point? Why are you pressing W towards a shaman when their Grounding Totem is up? I have questions. Yeah, so you can do that to shamans, you can do that to mages, you can do that to all manner of other classes. Even Shadow Priests don't like it when you do this stuff to them. It is what it is. So anyways, I'll end this video here, and Deus Vult, boys.